the Sustainability Management Master's Program, you're answering one simple question. Do you care about your future generation? If you care about your kids, their grandkids, then you care about sustainability. And a sustainability manager is someone who has the tools to make people understand how they can contribute towards developing a sustainable world. We have both part-time and full-time students. Our curriculum is 30 hours. Instead of thesis, we have a research project course and a seminar course which provides them with the kind of research background they will need to be successful in their job. But at the same time, sustainability is not always everything about environment. It also relates to the business. They will take a sustainable business strategies course. They will take a project management course. Most of these courses are going to be taught by industry people, the people who are doing sustainability on a daily basis as a part of their job. Any organization that has a large number of employees and has a physical infrastructure, they will have to have a sustainability office. If you have the passion to develop and maintain a sustainable world, come to us and we will help you shape your passion into a career which will create an impact.
The Stevens Institute of Technology is proud to present the Hugo New and Geocentric Consultants Hugo New Corporation Sustainability Seminar Series. Co-sponsored by Brown and Caldwell, H2M Architect and Engineers, BEM Systems, Catalyst Group, and WSP.
Thank you. Well, I'd like to start off by just thanking the sponsors. We've got them up on the page there for the Hugo News Sustainability Speakers Series. When I first talked to Dr. Sakhar, I was quite enamored with this idea in terms of sharing some knowledge and hearing more about the program. So quite thankful to all the sponsors that are involved in making this go on, including all the work that I'm sure a lot of the students like Samir put in as well. So appreciate that, appreciate the opportunity. So let's make sure that I'm, all right. So talk today is product sustainability in traditional organizations. And I think I'm going to have to speak a little bit about what a traditional organization is, and that's fine. I think where I started out, I definitely was traditional organization. So I'll go through that. And really, the premise in this whole presentation is that we're using a product sustainability approach to accelerate the rate of change in a traditional organization, and using the information that we can pull together to sort of present different views of what sustainability looks like at the product level. So why traditional organizations, you ask? I think this is highly relevant to the audience because that is where most of the jobs are once you graduate. There's definitely some companies out there, Unilever, for example, that are leaders in the pack in their different sectors. But quite frankly, most of the organizations out there are just struggling to try to figure out what all this sustainability stuff is about. So the chances are high that you'll land somewhere in one of those kinds of organizations. So we'll talk a little bit about that transition as well. You'll note that my title does not include the word sustainability in it. And I wanted to point that out because that's highly relevant to this talk, and I think to your situation. If you have a technical level of or degree of expertise, and you have some understanding of sustainability, I think you'll be well positioned. But most of the sustainability jobs are not in the sustainability department. Sustainability department quite often has a lot to do with reporting. They do a lot of other things, but where the real work is in all the other parts of the organization. So we have to engage if we're able to solve this problem of sustainability. Sure, I got this. So thanks for the introduction, Dr. Sakhar. I wanted to pull out four descriptive phrases of me that I think are highly relevant to this presentation. Yes, I'm a product stewardship leader. Product stewardship is very close to product sustainability, which I think you'll see throughout the talk. But I think most important is I believe it's possible to create a sustainable future. It's not too late. I work in a rather large agricultural company, and yes, I'll talk about that in a little bit. And being in a rather large agricultural company, there are a lot of sustainability challenges. And the work that I feel that I like to do is inspiring people to lower product risks and create benefits that move us closer to that sustainability vision. So who and what is Nutrien? Nutrien is really two pieces. You'll see the two logos up there. Nutrien Feeding the Future is the wholesale fertilizer production and distribution division. And Nutrien Ag Solutions is the crop input sales and services. So all the crop inputs that would go into growing food would include fertilizer, seed, pesticides, adjuvants, and other nutrient sources to make the plants grow the way that they need and get a good crop. I've given you some stats on this page, but the headline of this is Nutrien is a very large company. More than 23,000 employees, 13 countries, 27 billion in sales, if you include all the crop inputs, 20 million tons of fertilizer produced, even more sold, and roughly 2,000 farm centers. And to give you a sense, farm centers are basically like a retail store for farmers. So it's kind of like the Walmart of fertilizer crop inputs for farmers. So spread well. A lot of this is mostly in the North America region, but really spreading quickly. So quite a big organization and a lot of challenges. So I wanted to talk about what you're going to learn in this presentation today. And basically, I'm going to use sustainability concepts applied to the fertilizer value chain. I'll talk a little bit about the value chain if you haven't heard of it before. A lot of people get confused. There's value chain, supply chain. So we'll talk about that a little bit. And that's a tenet of both fertilizer product stewardship and product sustainability that tie the two together. So I'm hoping to give you a product sustainability model to sort of trigger your thinking and how to look at this in an organization. And possibly you can use this model to generate your own product sustainability approach when you get a job somewhere in another organization. I'm going to speak about the elements of the fertilizer value chain and go through each section of it and talk about what the challenges are that industry are against, specifically in the fertilizer chain as an example. I'm also going to talk about real life examples, including a couple where we've leveraged existing processes in the organization to add in product sustainability. So part of this message is, if you start out in a traditional organization, you don't need to just destroy everything that's there. The chances are you can leverage a lot of the information and a lot of the work processes and procedures that are in place and add sustainability into that. I'm also going to define what I mean by that traditional organization that'll be coming up. And because I promised Samir, I'm going to talk about the number of the different tools that I use. I'm not going to go into detail about the tools, but you'll notice on some of the slides, there's a little red note at the bottom that refers to the tool. I'll mention it. And I'm going to leave you with this presentation. And I've got a definition of each of the tools and a link that you could go to find more information. So I'm hoping this will really give you a lot of information to take away, think about, and utilize some point in the future. And if I'm successful, I'm expecting you will think differently about product sustainability challenge in organizations and probably have an opportunity in your future to work some of those changes. So this is the title of an article in Bloomberg that I pulled out. And I wanted to ask the question, how is this talk relevant to you? And I think this title of this article really sums it up. Despite glowing climate fears, global firms struggle with solutions. And this was a survey of 2,000 executives in different companies. 97% of those who responded said that climate change has affected their business. but only 19% had implemented common tools that they could use to actually perpetrate that change. 88% of them said that action is needed like immediately. So I think this talk is relevant to all of us in some very impactful ways to our lives. How it's specifically relevant to you, when I see this title, what comes to mind immediately is a lot of change that's going to have to happen. These companies at the top level haven't got things figured out, and so they're going to need people with solutions, and that means massive opportunities for anyone with a technical expertise plus sustainability knowledge and understanding to come in and start making a difference. And if we can achieve that in our company, we're going to make a difference for the planet. And I can't think of any higher order goal than something like that. So let's talk about the as-is state in the traditional organization. And I'm sure you could come up with a whole lot more qualifying statements about what a traditional state is. I've chosen these because they apply particularly to what I'm going to speak about. Chances are in most traditional organizations, they're fairly well-established organizations. There's probably a high product impact on the environment and maybe in some social areas as well. They have a sustainability department because this time, pretty much every company has a sustainability department, but what exactly it does in terms of its scope of actions is a completely different story. And I'm going to sort of overview a little bit of that. The chances are the company is very focused on itself. And what I mean by that is it takes care of its business. You know, it's from gate to gate of the company. It deals with its manufacturing or its production or its services. And then anything that happens outside its scope of attention, they don't really pay so much attention to. And that ties into the whole idea of, are you thinking internally in a company-focused way, or are you thinking externally in a complete value chain way? And that's a major tenet of this product sustainability. And these companies, you know, they've been around for a while, they've got a lot of data, but is it all in one place? And can you necessarily make sense of it in the form it's in? Probably not, meaning it's very disaggregated. There's a piece of data here in this department, there's a piece of data in product stewardship. And when all that data is disaggregated all over the place, you can't really see the picture in terms of what you're up against. So that's the traditional organization, and the premise of this talk today is how do we move from the as-is state to the to-be state. So a to-be state is a lower product impact directionally. Instead of a sustainability department, we actually have an embedded sustainability culture. So everybody is working on sustainability. We can't leave it up to the sustainability department to just solve all our problems. Rather than being company focused, it's value chain focused. I'll show you a value chain a little bit better, a little bit later, so you'll see what I'm talking about. But it's basically means the company is thinking about what happens to all the stuff that they use before it gets to us, and what happens to our products after it leaves our gate. Who is using them? Are they using them the right way? Are they using them in a way that they're going to cause harm socially or environmentally? And also, a to-be state has a bunch of consolidated information that now they can use to make smarter sustainability decisions. So I wanted to note, this is where one of the first tools is. So if you look down in the lower left-hand corner, this as is to be is a future desired state. And this is a common business process improvement tool that's been used, that I've used for a long time. Not that we're creating new business processes here, but I like it because the to be aspect of it actually gives you a vision of where you want to get to. And that's a common tenet of sustainability, is think about where you need to be and then backcast yourself to where you are today, the as-is state, and then you can reverse engineer that process. And that helps you decide, what do I need to do to get to that to-be state? So I basically use this tool as a visioning mechanism. So let's get on to the product sustainability solution. So I've got a nice short definition up there: product, environment, social, and economic benefits over the life cycle and long term. That sounds all very nice, but what does that really mean? So I gave the answer away in the title of the slide of the whole presentation, but here it is, and now I'm going to explain it. And this is a mind map picture of what product sustainability is. And what I've done is I've identified all the key elements and inputs that make up a product's sustainability. To me, all the actions of an organization are embedded, and the results are embedded in the product or the service itself that it delivers. So everything that you're doing has to be counted in a sustainability sense to contributing to maybe a negative impact or hopefully a more positive impact. So on the left-hand side, I've got footprints, water footprint, emissions footprint, hazard footprints, and then material input footprints. And those are all tend to be some of the negative impacts that you need to try to minimize. And then you see some other aspects in there: the circularity factor, the triple P, which of course stands for people, product, and planet, the triple bottom line concept. And then you'll see some arrows at the bottom with product development, meaning your best chance at improving product sustainability. You can do a bunch of things to reduce the negative impacts, but your best chance is to work with the product development team to alter the products, to get safer materials in there and reduce those impacts and all of these factors. So the purpose of bringing this information to a product level, I want to make that distinction. At least in my company, and I think in a lot of other companies, they're always reporting their greenhouse gas emissions numbers, but they report them as a whole unit. And they say, okay, you know, we produce 5 million tons of carbon a year type of thing. And that's great because that's what they have to report to the government and to their shareholders. But bringing that down to a product level changes the thinking. So if I make 1,000 tons of product and I have 10,000 tons of carbon emissions, that means I've got 10 units of carbon emission per ton of product. Now you're getting down to a granular level where you can start to see some of the differences between your products, and that gives you more ability to take action to change that, which is what it's all about. So I use this model and the idea that working at the product level is quite useful for assessing product risks, which products have high emissions, which have low emissions, setting targets for improvement in specific areas, responding to customers who now demand this information. And that's a big part of our product stewardship responsibilities, is responding to customers with information on our products in the sustainability nature so that they can use those numbers in the calculation of their footprints. Also helps to create decisions to change the product portfolio, and we can compare ourselves with competitors. So we apply this framework across the crop production value chain to identify where there is value being created and where we have problems. And the goal, of course, in all these footprint pieces is to reduce that footprint number. So later on, I'm going to show you some examples pertaining to the hazard footprint, the materials footprint, and the product development areas specifically. It's a little bit much to cover in this the time for this talk, but I think I can give you some representative examples. So now let's look at the chain. Well, first of all, how do we do that? Like, how do we take this product model and go ahead to get some action? So I call it, this is basically our strategy, is to take a holistic approach to product risk. So we define the risk, that's collecting, aggregating all that data on the products in the sustainability nature to see what we've got, producing the product portfolio so we can see everything together all at once, a picture of how good or bad it is. And I'm going to show you actually a small segment of a product portfolio and take you through it so you can get the idea of how that works. You then leverage supporting processes or build new ones to make changes in the organization to your product. And then you collaborate with all the other departments to improve on some of these decisions. And I'll take you through this process. So what does the crop production value chain look like? I'm going to start off with a quote from Our World in Data, and you can see that this has got another value chain mapping signal at the bottom. So there's a definition, more definition about what this value chain stuff is about, and a good link to it. So how material is fertilizer and food production? Food production accounts for 26% of all the planetary emissions produced by humans. That is a big number. Crop production, which is the growing of the food, is 27% of that 26%. And fertilizer is one of the biggest components in that crop production, 27%. So we're definitely in territory where fertilizer has a big impact on the planet. This is an example of the fertilizer value chain. So we get some materials, we maybe extract them. A lot of fertilizer is made from natural gas, so that's fossil fuels. So right away, we got a bit of a problem. Excuse me. There's a production plant somewhere. There's a lot of distribution out into the market, because the way the fertilizer cycle works is you have to make a lot of product for most of the year, and it all goes out onto the field in the course of 6 weeks in the spring. So that means it's a massive infrastructure and logistics problem. Then you grow some crops. I think this is wheat, if you like, and that's the benefit part of it. And then you've got some disposal of the fertilizers. So Nutrien operates in this green banded range. We make some of our own materials. We buy natural gas to produce fertilizer, but we source some of our own materials and buy from others. We're a major producer, as you would have seen in the opening part of the talk about who is Nutrien. We ship product all across the country into logistics through rail, ship, and truck, and we have warehouses all across the company. And we work with growers in applying the fertilizer and the other crop inputs. So we have a handle in part of the use part as well. So you can see that's the part that we play in the supply chain or in the value chain. And in a traditional company, we would think only about that green band. This is what we do. These are our operations. And so let's only think about that. But we have to change our thinking and think about what happens before and what happens after. And I'm going to give you some examples of some of that, how we look at that and some of the problems. So let's go on to some of the problems. I think I'm doing okay for time. So let's look at some of the value chain challenges. So a lot of the material that we get is mined material, and where exactly that comes from, we have to pay attention to it, because there's greenhouse gas emissions associated with that, but there's also social responsibility. For example, if we're mining phosphate rock on another side of the globe, and it's causing an environmental concern and disrupting a community in that area of the world, then that's a social responsibility issue. And that's something that we need to pay attention to, even though it's outside the scope of our normal operations. Some fertilizers tend to be have a chemical hazard classification. So we need to think about, how does that impact the workers, and how does that impact the growers, and are those products hazard to the environment in any particular way? So we have to account for those kinds of risks. And unfortunately, one of the biggest challenges for the crop production cycle chain is that there's a fair amount, or there can be a fair amount, of ecological leakage. Farmers are looking for the maximum amount of crop so that they can get more money. And so if fertilizer is not too expensive, they'll over apply the fertilizer. That's not all used up. And so the part that's not used leaks into waterways and goes into the land and starts creating ecological damage. And so we can say that's the farmer's problem. That's not our problem. We just make the fertilizer. But I don't think that that's really a responsible way to look at it. We have to look at how we can educate those growers and make products that are less prone to leakage. So that's that expanded thinking that we need to go through. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to take you through examples where we've used the product sustainability model to address each of these three elements. So first example is the material supplier risk evaluation. Let me go back. Yeah, material supplier risk evaluation, and I've got a definition of this in the backup information. So, and this is also an example of taking an existing process that we had embedded in the organization for a while, where we validated the material that we were buying to make sure it was fit for purpose in a regulatory sense, so that we could use it in our product and we didn't create any regulatory compliance issues when it goes into our products. So an example would be if you were using hazardous waste as a source of micronutrients to make a fertilizer, that hazardous waste has limitations in terms of how you can use it, and you certainly cannot apply it to the land because now you're contaminating something. So that's part of this process, and my intent in showing you this form is not that you read it. I purposely made it quite small, but this is how we manifest the material validation, is we send this form to the supplier and we say, okay, fine, you can supply us with this material. We want you to answer some questions in a regulatory sense about the product, where it comes from, how you obtain it, and what is its regulatory status. You know, does it have a special EPA risk number? Is it a virgin material? Was it a mined material? And the questions in this form are set up specifically to test the knowledge of the supplier. Because we find we would ask about the material and everything sounds good, but the supplier didn't really know very much about what they were talking about. And so they were just making up answers that they thought we wanted to hear, and we weren't getting the truth. So the way that questions are crafted is we can kind of catch them because there's some inconsistencies that if they say one thing, it means another. And so if they answer wrong. So we also found that we had to couple the supplier and the material, because we would identify materials that were not very sustainable or had regulatory problems, and then we would go to a different supplier. Well, guess what? That supplier is probably getting the material from the same source, and so we have the same problem all over again. So that's one way that we weed out sustainability risk or regulatory risk materials. The part that we added onto that to build the sustainability component in is there are some questions and some investigation of the supplier in terms of their social responsibility. So does the supplier have a lot of EPA office actions against them? Have they been accused of dumping materials where they shouldn't? Are they involved in a big lawsuit issue where they're digging up they're digging a giant hole in the earth to get this material that you can see from the moon? So we do that kind of investigation to say, what is their social responsibility credit score, I guess, if you like, and are there any problems that could come back to us? And in their answers and the way we ask the questions, we also can detect their general level of stewardship maturity. How close attention are they actually paying to this? Are they being responsible? Do they have process in place like product stewardship processes so we have more assurance that we're not getting stuck with some bad material and a future sustainability social responsibility problem? the other key piece I want to bring in here is each of these examples we coordinate or collaborate with another department. In this case, we collaborate with the procurement department. So just like I was saying, you can't expect the sustainability department to be doing all the sustainability work. This is an example where this product stewardship department is doing some sustainability work and collaborating with another department so that we build the procurement piece, because of course they're the buyers. So if we educate them on what we're looking for, they help us to get the right answers, and it makes it a worthwhile exercise. The next example, this is really the big one, and this is a tiny snapshot of a piece. I've talked about aggregating all this data, and I talked about the water footprint and the carbon footprint and the hazard footprint. So the idea is, when you see all this information together for a product in those factors, you get a completely different picture of some of the risks. So what I've done here is I've shown you a few of the metrics. Health hazard 1 or 2, that's a hazard type risk. Use efficiency is actually a circular economy benefit. If we can develop a high use efficiency for the product, then that's fits in with circular economy. Ecological leakage would be a environmental or ecological impact, and greenhouse gas generation is another ecological impact. So I've given you 2 very common nitrogen fertilizers, and I'm going to go through this and explain it. And I've taken out the numbers just to make it simple to sort of understand in a very quick basis. Red is obviously bad, green is good, and everything in the middle. So on a chemical hazard sense, ammonia is a health hazard 1 or 2, 1 being the highest level for eye damage. And so that's a pretty damaging hazard to deal with, which means the ammonia can be used safely, but you've got to have a lot of equipment with it, around protective equipment, and you got to be careful. Okay, use efficiency, ammonia gets a yellow, which is not so good. It is concentrated, it's got a high nutrient value, but because of the health hazard, its use efficiency, there's no added advantage to improving the use efficiency as is. There are some things you can do. So it doesn't really get very many points for being ultra circular economy like. It's got some ecological leakage on the air side. I've colored orange, meaning that ammonia, when it's supplied by the farmer, if it evaporates into the environment, it goes up into the air. Ammonia will create pollution, the 2.5 micron level pollution that is a health hazard for your lungs. But also, and perhaps even worse, ammonia can react to create N2O gases, which are even more extreme in terms of carbon greenhouse gas content than carbon itself. And then we look at the greenhouse gas generation. In the production of ammonia, there's a lot of energy used, and there's a lot of natural gas. And so you've got a high greenhouse gas component to that ammonia. So now let's take a look at urea. Urea starts out pretty good because it has no health hazard to speak of. And the urea that I'm speaking about, I've given it a green for use efficiency because we've added a coating to the urea. And what the coating does to the urea is it keeps it from dissolving. And so the urea lasts longer over a longer period of the growing season. So you get more use efficiency out of it. Urea is about the same as ammonia, or maybe a little less in ecological leakage, but not from the air into waterways, because you apply the urea on the land, and then it's a solid, and it gets dissolved in the groundwater, and what's not taken up by the plants has a tendency to go into the streams or rivers. So it's a waterway pathway. And then on the GH ESG generation, the production of urea isn't high in generating greenhouse gases, but the use is, because when the plant uses the urea, it takes the nitrogen, but it leaves the carbon dioxide, and then the carbon dioxide goes into the atmosphere. So the point in going through this in detail, each product has its own profile, and some elements are good, and you may say, you're like, well, yeah, urea looks pretty good in some senses, but it can be damaging in others. And so you have to look at all these factors to decide what actions are you going to take to reduce the negative impacts. And we use this information in this consolidated form to look at sustainable product opportunities that we can identify. For example, we've developed urea with a coating that reduces the use efficiency. We've added in some circular economy metrics to think about how do we make these products even higher use, reduce waste, and so on. And the numbers aspect of this we use for our ESG reporting on a yearly basis. So we see a lot of numbers coming out of this that the sustainability department is looking forward to us to improve our ratings. So you get a lot of bang for your buck out of this product risk picture. And this is really the consolidation of that disaggregated data that I was speaking about earlier. One more quick example is reducing product impacts on the downstream part of the sorry, on the starting stream of the product life cycle. So this is about working with the product innovation or product development team. And in a typical sense, we've worked with them on a regular basis to advise on product regulations. So this is what you have to do to get your product licensed for use. And we give them advice on hazards because the product stewardship department creates the safety data sheets. But what we've added to that, because we've embedded sustainability principles into product stewardship, is we now offer this as well. We can give them safer ingredient advice. So we've had several cases recently where they were thinking of adding a new component into a product, and they had a choice of 3 or 4 different items. And so we pointed to them and said, okay, as long as you can get, it's effective, we recommend that you choose option A because it's the less hazardous, and that at least starts to move the whole company into its thinking and the product portfolio to ultimately a non-hazardous situation in the future. We also are able to advise on more effective products because most of us in this department or many of us are chemists or are toxicologists or similar. And so we're able to advise them to say, okay, the chemistry of this product would be more effective if we did this. So we're offering technical advice that provides that greater knowledge of how to design that product. And this example really embodies both the technical expertise aspect that I think many of you are studying for, and the sustainability knowledge aspect that you're built into the MBA program. And of course, we also can advise them on ways to reduce a hazard class. For example, if they reduce a hazardous component down to a low level, we can probably reduce that hazard class and make a safer product. So these are extra things that we've embedded in because of our sustainability thinking into the whole program. All right. So I'm wrapping up now, and that was a very quick flash by of product sustainability, but hopefully it was meaningful for you. And I wanted to end with by talking about some of the contributions that we've realized in collaborating with the sustainability departments and others. We've managed to convince them that product sustainability is a pretty important aspect of our overall profile. And we actually now have a public statement. It's in our ESG report, and so we can't run away from it. It's out there in the public. Nutrien is committed to the safe and responsible and sustainable handling and use of our products. So now we can be called on that. We have an ESG target specific to product sustainability, where by 2023, we have to complete risk evaluations, part of which I just told you about, for all of our fertilizers and report back on them. So another commitment to the public. And if you look back at our as our to-be state in the scorecard, we are definitely more value chain focused and carrying that across the organization. We're still consolidating the data, but we have a lot of it consolidated enough to start creating these profile pictures. We've definitely been building sustainability culture by working with other departments in a collaborative way to say, we would like to embed some of our sustainability requirements into your processes. And I would say we're starting to lower product impact. The few examples that I did give you, that's definitely going in the right direction. So we've got to move on the whole business. So that's really what I wanted to speak about. But before I end the discussion, I just wanted to take you through this because I know that you're videotaping this as well, and so that you can have it for. And I'm going to give the Dr. Sakhar and I'm going to give you a copy of this presentation so everybody can get a copy and they can use the links or at least use the connections. So I offer you an invitation to connect. Jim Jenkins, Senior Manager, Product Risk and Stewardship. There's my email, my LinkedIn, and my own special little LinkedIn group that Alberta Sustainability Leaders. And we talk about lots of sustainability things in there. Here's the definitions, and I'm not going to go through them, don't worry. I just wanted to show you they're here. I've identified the as is to be, the mind mapping, triple bottom line, the value chain, and there's a link. I don't think they're active links, so you'll have to cut and paste and put them in, but you get the idea. And there's a few more: circular economy, product risk profiles. I think this group probably knows a lot about this stuff, so I didn't want to talk about the ins and outs of the triple bottom line or circular economy, but just how the application goes. And if you want to read about all this, because you suspect that it's not really true, page 21 of our 2022 ESG report is essentially the whole profile of what I've just talked about. The last thing I want to leave you with is, if I can leave you with any kind of message or impression, get involved in sustainability, because the world needs your help, and collaborate to increase your impact, because that's what we've done. And if we can do it, I'm sure you can.